From Fresno, GV Wire and CMAC present the 2019 Fresno City Council District 2 Special Election Forum. I'm David Taub, senior reporter for GV Wire. For the next hour or so, we'll be hearing from three of the candidates running to represent you in Northwest Fresno District 2. I'm joined in studio by three of the candidates, Jared Gordon, Mike Carbasi, Oscar Sandoval. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We'll hear from them in just a moment. They hope to succeed Steve Brandow, who won his own special election this past April to represent the area in the Fresno County Board of Supervisors. The special election takes place August 13th. Register to vote if you aren't registered already. GV Wire invited the other two candidates in the race, Lawrence Garcia and George Herman, but they have chosen not to participate in this forum. We'll get to the formal introductions in a minute, but our leadoff question, gentlemen. As you're campaigning, knocking door to door for sure, what are you hearing from the District 2 residents? What do they want? What's most important to them? And what do they want you to do about that? We'll start with Jared Gordon.
Well, I certainly hear a lot of concerns about homelessness among the people that I talk to when I'm walking precincts. There's a tremendous amount of concern about homelessness, both in the district and I think across the entire city. And it's something that I think people who are city leaders already knew we needed to address, but it's clear talking to the people that this is a critical issue for District 2.
Mike, what are you hearing on the campaign trail?
It really depends on what neighborhood you're walking in. If you're in the Star Elementary area, a lot of people are concerned about the left turn arrow at West and Sierra and all the accidents we have, and we want safe routes to schools. Well, that's right next to a school. If you're in the Herndon and Milburn area, people are really concerned about safety. I had a resident who had someone with mental health disturbance trying to break into her house with a machete. And public safety is really the #1 concern. And it's true, you do hear about homelessness too. I was born and raised in the district off of Sierra and Marks. I've never seen the level of homelessness in our district that we see today.
Right, and of course that'll be talking about homelessness a little bit later. Oscar Sandoval, you're knocking on doors. What are people telling you, and what do they want you to do about it?
Well, first off, GV Wire, thank you for having us. David, thank you. I think I've been hearing a varied amount of issues. It depends. When you go to Pinedale, there are a lot of people that have felt like they've been left out by representation. If you're out on the other side of the 99, a lot of the time they feel they're pretty content with their neighborhoods. And I think my big goal is to kind of bridge that divide, because we want everyone in our district, whether they live on Shaw or in Pinedale or in Fig Garden, to feel like they're safe and to feel like they're being represented.
All right, Mike Carbasi, what are two things that make you most proud to live in District 2?
Oh gosh, just two?
Two for right now.
I think a lot of our schools that we have there, I was born and raised in the district. I went to Malek, Tenaya, Bullard, and then Clovis West and Fresno State. And our district actually has Central Unified, Fresno Unified, and Clovis Unified. We're very unique. The biggest thing is the people. #1. In our business, I've met a lot of folks that live in District 2. So the residents are what make me proud to be a resident of Northwest Fresno. And the nice thing is we have a lot of, it's going to sound silly, but we have a lot of great trees. When you come to Northwest Fresno, it's a unique experience. We have a lot of vegetation. We have park space. And I want families to feel welcome when they come into District 2.
Oscar Sandoval, what are some couple things that make you proud to be from District 2?
So I'm a proud product of Central Unified. And anyone that knows Central knows that it's the largest enrollment in the Valley. I think in a lot of ways, Central Unified kind of represents the entirety of Fresno. It's very diverse. And there's a lot of people there that are kind of showing or living that version of the American dream that we're all striving towards. So I kind of think that District 2 is the best parts of Fresno realized. And however, we still have a lot of work to do. So just that overall representation is something that I'm most proud of.
All right, Jared Gordon, District 2, what are you proud about it? A couple things.
One of the things I love most about Northwest Fresno, which is the reason that I moved there in the first place, is I love the great diversity of Northwest Fresno. We have all kinds of people, all kinds of restaurants. And I'm a foodie, so I really appreciate the restaurants that we have available.
What's your favorite restaurant?
Well, I wouldn't want to pick favorites in the district, but I will say we've got a couple very nice Peruvian restaurants and some great taco places. And I'm a fan of both of those cuisines. I'm tremendously sad that we seem to have lost all of our Thai restaurants in the district, and I'm hoping that we can get some back. The second thing that I would add is that the district is a very friendly district. There are lots of places where if you walk around door to door in Fresno, not everyone is going to be so happy to see you. But my experience has been walking precincts and talking to voters that people are very happy to meet you in District 2, and I really appreciate the friendliness of the district.
All right, gentlemen, now time to talk about your favorite subject, yourselves. Why don't you introduce yourselves, give it a little bit about your background, and what connects you to the people of District 2. Oscar, I understand you're a therapist.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
I work with kids that have special needs, such as autism, Down syndrome. And in that experience, I got to see really the disconnect from the help that they need to what is actually available to them. But going back a little bit further, I was born and raised in Fresno, went to Central all my entire life. I did my undergrad at CSU Bakersfield, did my first master's at Long Beach State, worked as a therapist for a little bit, but I felt that calling to work more on the policy side, get more involved in my community. So I enrolled at USC. I'm studying public policy at the moment. Jared is a Bruin, unfortunately, so I'm going to tease him about that. But yeah, I think being at the Price Public Policy School, I get to see and talk about a lot of the things that can make a city better, and a lot of really simple solutions that I think the council has currently constructed isn't really going after. So I think if I'm elected, those are the things I'll be really pushing for. Simple solutions like adding free Wi-Fi to our public parks. I think that's something that can not only help our parks, but it can make more people's voices heard, and it can get us a better idea of how to actually service the parks so they actually serve the community as a whole.
And just for the record, you're going to USC on your own merits.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I did not pay $500,000 to get in.
All right, Jared, you've been outed as a UCLA Bruin. You're an attorney from McCormick Barstow. Tell us a little bit more about what kind of law you practice and your history here in District 2.
Sure. So the reason that I'm a UCLA Bruin is that I went to law school at UCLA, attended undergrad at Claremont McKenna College, and after 8 years of Los Angeles traffic, I decided it was high time to come back to Fresno, where I'm born and raised, and have been a happy Fresnan ever since. I've lived in District 2 since 2006. I bought my house right at the top of the market, and have had no real thoughts about leaving the district since, although I do actually finally have positive equity. Since the time that I bought my house, I got married to my beautiful wife, Dr. Yvette Segura, who's a psychologist at Children's Hospital. We have 2 kids, Mari and Isla, both of whom attend Daily Elementary School. Both are precocious readers, which I'm very proud of. And in terms of my professional life, I'm an attorney. I represent businesses, mostly small businesses, and a lot of them in the tech sector. So I'm a big believer in the value of the internet and technology to revolutionize the way that we work and that government works. And I hope to bring some of that expertise to City Hall.
All right. Mike, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I did mention before I was born and raised in the district. In fact, we haven't had a councilman representing District 2 from the district in at least 20 years. And I say that because, you know, when someone tells me that there's potholes on Barstow and they're frustrated, it's personal. I drive that street all the time. Or they're concerned about speeding down marks and people not following the stop signs. It's personal. But, you know, I grew up in a small family business. It's called Persian Rug Collections. It's at Bullard and West. And, you know, I've had an opportunity after leaving Malik to go work as a child, and you learn about small business. And then, of course, I went to Fresno State and got a management degree, and I'm very proud of being a Fresno State Bulldog. But I've also started my own business. So, you know, we don't have any council members right now that actually have had to run their own payroll. And I know the burden of trying to work with the city and work with the state when I had my restaurant for 3 years, and being able to navigate the bureaucracy that we have. So for me, I bring a unique blend of experience to be able to, I've seen the practical effect of how government can impact you in a good way and in a bad way, unfortunately. So what I do want to do is not only cut the red tape at City Hall, I want to make sure that we make things easier so people can open a business and have the opportunities my family had. Everything we've had is because of Northwest Fresno and the opportunities through opening a small business here and being able to work there and pay for college. So,
just a quick follow-up for all 3 of you. If you are elected, do you plan to continue running your businesses, doing what you do? Jared?
Well, certainly I expect to dramatically scale back my law practice, but I will probably practice a little bit of internet law and some regulatory advice on the side.
Mike?
You wrote a great article about councilmen needing to actually go to meetings, and I fully support that. And my biggest priority, I'm not working hard to get elected only to not do the job. I'm working hard so I can do the job, and I will be at every meeting.
I'll be done with school in May, and besides that, I don't have any other conflicts because I agree with the premise of your article. City council members need to be at the meetings.
All right. Now, Mike Carbasi kind of mentioned this before, that constituent services, it's kind of an underrated part of the job, but to a lot of people, probably the most important people of the job, whether they have a problem with a cracked sidewalk or a light that's out, they can call 621-CITY, they can call 311, they can use the Fresno app. But, what do you do when somebody calls you, talks to you? First of all, how they want you to contact you with their problems, and they say, I have a cracked sidewalk. There's graffiti on the wall. There's drag racing on Herndon. How are you going to respond to that? How are you going to fix that problem? We'll start with Jared Gordon.
So first I want to say that I actually have, I think uniquely among the council candidates, done constituent service directly in that my very first job was as an intern for Councilmember Mike Briggs. So I actually took those calls and I myself handled those kinds of constituent services. So I know how important they are to people in the district, and they will be my top priority. So when it comes to what I expect to work on, what I expect my staff to work on, dealing with government is what you are elected to do. And whether that's big picture things like trying to completely revamp the development code, or whether it's small picture things like there's graffiti on my wall, or there's a trash can that's been destroyed by someone who crashed into it and I need a replacement. All of those things are important and critically important to someone, and they have to be addressed. They will be the center of my universe as a council member.
Do you have like a turnaround time, a goal you want to set? If somebody calls, leaves a message, what do you expect that problem to be fixed?
Well, unfortunately, knowing city government as I do, some problems won't get fixed quickly. But in terms of response to that constituent, every constituent should be responded to within one business day. I mean, it should be ideally within an hour or so, but it depends on the kind of situation and what the potential problem is that the constituent's facing. Not everything, of course, can be solved in a day or even months. That's certainly the case. In my law practice, I see all kinds of problems that take sometimes years to resolve with the city, but they will get resolved.
So Mike Carbasi, constituent calls you, says, it's dark in my neighborhood, my street light's out. How do you go about handling that?
Well, like I said, we don't just have an open seat, we have a vacant seat, and I haven't waited to get elected to help people. My cell phone number, by the way, is 601-0564. That's how people can contact me. It's off right now, so don't call while we're doing the podcast. But it's 601-0564. I'll give you a quick story. And by the way, constituent services is the most important part of the job, because your councilman is the person you see at the grocery store. It's the person you see walk in the neighborhood. And my responsibility is to listen and then serve. So I had a resident named Donna. She's a retired nurse from Valley Children's, and we have a video on our website, mikeforfresno.com, about this. The city came out, dug a hole in her park because of an irrigation problem, and then took off on Friday. Donna called my cell phone, she got my little flyer, saying, Mike, I don't have anyone to talk to, I need help. I go out there, and this is Sunday night, and that hole filled with water, so it was a 4-foot deep puddle. And it was a tragedy waiting to happen, and she has a grandchild. She doesn't want her falling in there. So we got the neighborhood together and put some plywood and covered it. It took me, going back and forth with the city, 6 days to get that hole fixed. I want to do that in 1 day, and that's why I'm running to be your council member.
Oscar Sandoval, sounds like 1 day seems to be the turnaround time. So how do you handle constituent services? Like somebody calls you with a problem, what's your way to solve that problem?
So, David, I think it really depends on the problem, because again, when you go down Barstow, there are those potholes. I drive that road every single day, and I'm surprised my axles haven't fallen off my car. The thing is, I think we as a government need to, as elected officials working in 2019, we need to embrace all modern forms of communication. So whether that's making ourselves more accessible, like via the city's website, embracing social media more, making improvements to the Fresno Go app, or even making our own personal apps where constituents can get a hold of us directly. Again, it just depends on the problem. Potholes won't get fixed in a day. However, anyone that calls me looking for help, they will be responded to within the hour.
All right, you are watching the District 2 Special Election Forum on GVWire.com and CMAC. I'm David Taub, Jared Gordon, Mike Kerbasi, Oscar Sandoval joining me. We've mentioned before, District 2 has its share of homeless people, panhandlers and others down on their luck. So I want to know, if you encounter a situation, whether you see a homeless person on the sidewalk or a panhandler in the median, or you're out shopping and you see somebody camped out behind a business, just personally, what do you do when you're encountered with that situation? We'll start with Mike Kerbasi.
Well, you know, after the last 6-7 months of walking the district, I kept hearing about homelessness more and more in all different parts of the district. So I actually went out. There's an event once a month in Roding Park where they feed the homeless, and I went out there. And I wanted to speak directly to homeless people because my business has faced a situation where people are camping in front of it. And it's really difficult to sell a Persian rug when folks feel intimidated to come in. But these are people too. So I spoke to some of the folks and I wanted to see firsthand what their story is and what's going on, because if we're going to solve this problem, we have to understand the problem. There's been a 23% increase in unsheltered homelessness in Fresno. And that number doesn't even include the people that are couch surfing or the people that are living in their car. And so, you know, I think ultimately what it comes down to, I've met with H. Spies, I've met with Preston Prince, I even met with Kevin Faulkner, who's the mayor of San Diego. He was here in Fresno about a month ago. I had a nice long conversation about this because they've had some success over there. I don't want to reinvent the wheel when it comes to homelessness. I want to look and see what other communities have done. We talk a lot about bridge housing, but there's a step before that. People want to know right now what they can do, because we have a lot of homeless camping out on Bullard, the Herndon and Polk area under the overpass, on Blackstone, along the river, along Shaw, and they want something done now. So there is a way to be able to actually compassionately and responsibly enforce the no camping ordinance by providing a sanctioned homeless encampment that's low barrier, that will have porta potties, hand washing stations, possibly portable showers, and it becomes a triage center. So all these groups that we're funding with taxpayer money, like West Care or the VA, they'll actually be able to go to one spot or several spots around town, identify, okay, you're a homeless vet, or you have a drug addiction problem, and actually provide the services we need, because we've got to reverse this trend and start bringing that number down. Our residents want results.
I'm sure, Mike. And Oscar Sandoval, you encounter a homeless person, and whether you're shopping, whether you're driving, see on the street corner, how do you handle that? What do you do?
I think the first thing we have to do is remember that they are human. I think homelessness kind of takes that humanity away from a person, and you kind of just see them as akin to an object. So to solve our city's growing homelessness problem, we need to have a multi-pronged solution. So what I mean by that is we need to look into different types of housing. We need to also address their mental health resources, because our city, unfortunately, is also lacking in those services. We need to give them job training and trying to reintegrate them back into society, and then also open up more rehab sources, because unfortunately, drug addiction, our city has a big problem with meth, unfortunately. All of it is interconnected. And even though those problems aren't as apparent in District 2, they're apparent in our entire city. And what is good for District 7 is also good for District 2 and is good for the Central Valley as a whole. So that multi-pronged approach is something I get a little more in detail into in my website, oscarforfresno.com. But that's the approach we're going to need to take, because it is a complex problem.
What do you think of the anti-camping ordinance that was passed by council last year?
I thought it was a way to criminalize kindness, unfortunately. And the camping ordinance itself is kind of a way in which we do need to explore more creative solutions for housing. However, anti-camping, I think that was kind of a bridge too far. So we need to definitely get together, actually talk to the people that are experiencing this problem, talk to homeless activists, as I've been doing on the campaign trail, get their input, and ask them what they really need.
Jared Gordon, you encounter a homeless person on the street while shopping. What's your reaction?
Well, I treat them with dignity and respect, and I expect that the homeless residents of District 2 will also treat the rest of the residents of District 2 with dignity and respect for the laws, including the no camping ordinance, which I'm a strong supporter of. And that as we compassionately reach out to the homeless to help them, we have to also expect that the homeless will not hurt the rights of other people. So we have to be able to enforce our laws against theft, against destruction of property, against trespass. But in order to do that, it means that we also need to build housing, and at least some kind of shelter, transitional housing, low barrier, something that allows the homeless with dogs, with children to come, something that is not intimidating to people who are victims of violence. And if I can, I'm going to tell you a little story about my first encounter with long-term homeless people. When I was in high school, I used to volunteer for the Marjorie Mason Center, and I read to homeless children because their mothers were victims of domestic violence, and they were sheltered by Marjorie Mason. So for 3 years, I read to homeless children. And those children are children no different than my children. And so I have long understood that when it comes to homelessness, everyone can be affected, children can be affected, and we have to embrace them, embrace change for them. But at the same time, if you're going to treat someone fairly and equally, you have to expect the same amount of respect for the law that you would expect from yourself and from the rest of your neighbors.
Can we add something, David? That's
go
okay.
ahead. I was going to say that, GV Wire, we recently reported that 16% is about the homeless increase in Fresno. Do you think the city is not doing something that they should, Mike?
I think there are a lot of folks, like the mayor's done a great job of raising more money for our support services, but like I said, we have to be able to get from A to Z. My residents in Northwest Fresno are very kind, but they also want action. They are tired of feeling like our parks and our neighborhoods are being taken over. And look, there are a lot of homeless people that are desperate and they want help, and they just want temporary help so they can get back on their feet. And I'm completely in support of helping them do that. But at the same time, we do have a lot of folks that are also causing a lot of concern for our residents. So the city needs to actually be able to get serious about moving this needle. I don't want to read next year in GV Wire or the B or whatever that we have another 23% increase in unsheltered homeless. How are we actually going to be able to move the needle and get that number down? It's only going to happen if we provide a safe, clean environment for folks that are homeless to be able to have, before they have transitional housing, have a safe place they can go to.
Jared, is the city not doing something that they should be doing when it comes to the homeless problem?
Yeah, so I very briefly mentioned, but kind of glossed over, the importance of having distributed transitional and shelter housing. So one of the problems that the homeless have is that, as you might imagine, most homeless people don't have cars. They don't have ready access to get to the services downtown that are already provided. Where for you and I, it's a quick 15 to 20 minute drive down 99, 30 minutes if you're driving in the morning, as I did the other day, to get downtown to roughly where most of the services are. For the homeless, that could be an all-day walk down the railroad tracks in dangerous conditions. And so we need to better distribute our homeless services. We need to distribute shelter and housing opportunities throughout the city, because the homeless are now distributed throughout the city. There was a time long ago where homeless were largely concentrated in downtown Fresno, and that allowed us to forget about them, sadly. But today we need the services to meet where the homeless people are. We need to meet them where they are. And I think that's something that the city has sadly forgotten, and that I hope that we can fix when I'm on the council.
Oscar, any suggestions you have of the city should do something they're not doing right now? Yeah, so as I was saying earlier, this is a multi-pronged problem. So I think with a lot of the things that we overlook, like as Jared said, is transportation, but other things are that a homeless person might not have is, say they're applying for a job, and the person they're applying for, the company they're applying with requires an email address. Maybe that homeless person doesn't have one. So we need to not only give them that, but they might need a cell phone number, or a cell phone, because they can't be contacted, say if they want to get hired. So things like that, like providing a cell phone, providing an email address, giving them supportable, the right type of housing, giving them job training, actually giving them access to like clean needle exchange programs so we don't increase the rates of diseases, allowing more rehab, allowing mental health services. All of that's going to come into play. So we need to explore all of those options and put them forward. I think the city, our current city council members need to push for those things more. And just real briefly, would you be okay with a homeless shelter somewhere in District 2? Jared?
Absolutely. I think it's appropriate and now necessary for us to have some kind of homeless services provided in every district of Fresno, because homelessness is present in every district in Fresno.
Mike?
Whatever we do with land use in the district, whether it's a shopping center or a home or a shelter, I'm going to go to my residents first and talk to them, because we have to mitigate any concerns residents have. That's my #1 responsibility. And if we can do that, then we'll locate one in District 2.
Oscar?
I would be, because whenever I'm door knocking and talking to residents, and I say, we're going to need a homeless shelter in District 2, a lot of them are apprehensive, understandably. The thing is, the next thing I'll say to them, and I'm saying to you now, is it's better that they're in an environment where they can get help, and you know where they are, they know where they need to go, rather than just walking around our neighborhoods. It's something that's makes more sense and will benefit us in the long run.
All right, next topic. Mayor Brand in his 2020 budget includes no new police officers. Right now, there are about 830 sworn police officers, give or take. But of course, recently we saw more gun violence in the city of Fresno. A couple people died, a couple people got hurt, including a 10-month-old baby girl. Was it the right move, Mike Ribasi, for the mayor not to add more police officers and invest elsewhere in the city?
Well, you know, I'm the only candidate that signed the Safer Fresno budget pledge because public safety is the #1 responsibility of our city, police and fire. So no new cops, no budget. If you come to me with a budget that doesn't include hiring more police officers or support staff, I'm not going to vote for it. That's one thing that comes from my district. It's not just me. My residents want more safety. That night that young man was killed on his 22nd birthday, I was on a ride-along. And I don't think that, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, giving someone $1,000 is going to keep him from being enraged and shooting somebody. There are underlying issues that we need to talk about in our community to be able to prevent that step. But no, I think that we need to make it a priority. Fresno, and this is a GV Wire article about this a few years ago, Fresno is 200 officers short for the 5th largest city in the state, 830 officers for the entire city. We're supposed to have 2 per 1,000. We're at 1.4, 1.5. If we don't have the minimum number of officers to keep us safe, especially with all these state laws that are releasing people early, how on earth are we going to do that with the numbers we have now? Every budget should add more cops.
Jared, what do you think about the no new officers in the current budget?
Well, I certainly would like to add new officers, but new officers cost about $120,000 a year. So we have to find a way to pay for those officers. And I think that's the challenge that Lee Brand faced. It's the challenge that we'll face. I will say that it's my view that in addition to trying to find ways to bring in additional sworn officers, we also need to focus on investing on the officers that we have. That means improving the training for those officers. It means giving them new and better equipment. It means improving their communications abilities. We can make the officers that we have more effective and more capable. And I think if we do that, we won't necessarily need to be at the typical level of officers, although certainly if we can't afford it, we should get there.
Oscar, what do you say about the amount of police officers in the city and no new officers in the current budget?
Yeah, so I think that the amount of officers should be something that is determined, because obviously in Fresno it would be different than in Bakersfield per se. I think when you look at the violence of this weekend, unfortunately, it underlies a problem that in one of the shootings, a lot of the witnesses didn't cooperate with officers on scene. Unfortunately, that stems from a distrust in the police department as a whole, and that affects all of us because that allows criminals to get away with their crime. So what we need to do is essentially invest in programs that bring kids into familiar territory with these officers. These officers need to ideally come from the neighborhoods that they're policing. So we need to bridge that gap. We need to break down the walls that kind of shield and hide perceptions of the reality. And so I think our police officers shouldn't be understaffed, but I also think there's more we can do to foster better relationships between the police and the community.
David, I want to put something into context real quick. So we're talking about 830 sworn officers available. That doesn't mean they're all working at the same time. The Northwest, hold on. The Northwest Police District isn't just District 2. It runs all the way down as far as Shields in some areas. So we're talking about 4 shifts a day, 8 officers per shift, and oftentimes we don't have 8 officers, there's 5 per shift. So you're talking about a small number of officers protecting a huge area. This is why we don't have the minimum number of levels. And our budget, our general plan, all that needs to be committed to freeing up more money and increasing economic mobility, economic diversity in our community. We have more development, more shopping centers built, more jobs out there. That way we're growing our revenues. That's what we need to focus on so that we can hire more police officers, but we have to be a business-friendly city to do that.
Now, Mike, you say no new officers in the budget, you're not going to vote for the budget. Well, you have to have a balanced budget in the city of Fresno.
Absolutely.
So where do you take money away to hire more officers?
Well, I'll take it away from my salary if I have to. I'll take it away from my council budget if I have to.
$80,000 isn't going to pay for officers.
And the other council members should make the same commitment. We have to do what we have to do to keep our residents safe. And there are other areas in the budget, there are other departments we're going to have to look at. There's going to be some creative accounting we're going to have to look at. Number one responsibility is safety. That's number one. So I'm going to do whatever I have to do to make sure I can keep my residents safe and the businesses in District 2 as well.
Is there one particular department you think has too much money?
No, I'm not going to single out any department. Now, if there's a way we can, we just had an audit of the police department, and I think that they're running things pretty smoothly over there in terms of where we allocate our money. But I'm going to look at the budget line item by line item if I have to and find out what this new budget, once it's passed, where we can find different areas. We're going to have to find the money. We're talking about $120,000 per new officer. So you're telling me that out of $330 million, we can't find $1 million somewhere, 1/3%, to be able to hire more officers? I know we can do it.
Right, Oscar, if we're not going to hire more officers, what are your suggestions that we can do, the city, to reduce gun violence?
So we need to have more community policing programs, as I said, whether it's police officers dedicating shifts to just getting to know the residents in their neighborhoods, to actually having events at the park. I think when you think about a policeman, ideally, you always want to put the word neighbor in front of them, because ideally that's what these people should be. And I don't want another situation like it was this weekend where officers are on scene and no one's cooperating. So again, building those better relationships and just actually bringing these people together, these residents, these cops, other stakeholders in the community.
Well, do you think that's the problem, that the people just don't know? If the people knew the police officers a little bit more, they'd be more likely to cooperate if they're a witness?
I think that is a problem, yeah, because the thing is, with the national climate as it is, there are a lot of tensions between, say, communities of color, between police officers, and that kind of, it affects us at the local level as well. And so whenever, with the tension as it is, it prevents not only police officers who are overworked and underpaid and are, any cop's regular shift could be any one of our worst days of our lives. So I think that's a problem that we don't really address. The problem is there's a history of mistreatment against persons of color, persons with, I've seen it personally in my working in mental health. There was a drive-by shooting in a neighborhood that I worked in. Unfortunately, the person wasn't caught. And so a lot of that goes back to that tension and that mistrust between police and these affected communities.
Thanks, Oscar. Jared, if we don't add more cops to the budget, what are your suggestions to try to reduce gun violence in the city of Fresno?
Well, I do think that we need to try to add more cops to the budget, and I think that will come with more and better economic growth. So I don't know that this necessarily needs to be an either-or question, but I will say that one of the things that we found in the 1990s, if you look at the cities that were successful in dealing with the enormous amount of crime that we had in the 1990s and the ones that reduced it the fastest, what was most effective was not adding more police. What was most effective was allocating the police to the places where crime is most likely to happen. 2% of addresses in most metro areas will produce greater than 50% of all of the crimes, violent crimes in that city. So the police have already been effective in trying to identify ahead of time where crime is most likely to happen. But we need to do more on that front, and we need to have better intelligence and invest more in making sure that our police aren't just there in the city, but they're there where the crimes are going to happen so that we can proactively address them before violence occurs.
Yeah, and I would say there's a bit of a false choice there, because it's the way that even the question is framed is no new cops or no new budget. The thing is, we can do both. We can change the way policing is done, and we can also open up room in the budget for new officers because they, again, are very understaffed. When I'm door knocking on the other side of the 99 east of it, I mean, people don't, even though the area is more affluent, they don't often feel that response times are enough because there has been theft in the area. And so whether it's like building another station out there or just altering patrol routes, there's things like that that we can do that are more feasible and can actually put that presence together and put people together.
Mike, a quick response.
It is an either or. We can't reallocate officers when we don't have enough officers to reallocate. We're below the minimum. That's why I'm the only candidate who's committed to not approving a budget unless it has more cops. We don't have enough to provide the service we already need. That's why response times take so long. Look, I put in 140 hours of ride-alongs with Fresno PD. Okay, I've seen officers, they want to go out on their beats to the lower priority calls. They can't because there's priority zeros and priority ones on the board. This is the problem that we have today. And a lot of times when people don't cooperate, sometimes, forgive me, I was on a call where a person was shot 3 times because he was dealing drugs out of his house. He wouldn't cooperate because he was a criminal. So, I mean, we have to understand, we have to be concerned about the community, but we also have to stand up for our officers too.
Now, you alluded to this before, Mike, advanced peace. The city of Fresno voted. They're going to take 90 days to look at it, come back, and by the time they come back, one of you could be on the council voting on it. What do you think about programs like Advanced Peace and are there similar programs? Should the city engage in these alternate programs to help reduce violence?
I'm not going to support taxpayer dollars to pay gang members, but I do like the idea of collaboration. I think that Mr. Foster is very heartfelt and genuine. He really does want to reduce violence throughout the state. He's lost 2 children to gun violence, and I give him full credit for that. But I have a responsibility to taxpayers in my district. I am one of those taxpayers. I do have a business. I'm invested in this community. So I will look at what proposal they have. I love the idea of him and the chief working together on something. Let's see what they're going to come to. I have an open mind, but I'm not going to commit taxpayer dollars to paying gang members not to commit crimes.
Jared, Advanced Peace or similar programs, what do you think?
Well, I certainly would not have voted for something like the Advanced Peace proposal as it was originally laid out without there being really extensive data. And one of the problems that I have with the council even throwing $200,000 at the initial planning for Advanced Peace is that they've already got 2 locations where they're already working on things, Richmond and Oakland. Data is mixed between them. They don't have anyone doing any kind of real controlled study. And if we're going to try something as unconventional and frankly, I think a little bit morally troublesome as paying gang members, then I think we need, and in fact owe it to our citizens to be able to figure out whether that's going to work before we implement it in the city. I will add, too, that I think it is a great moral hazard danger that if we give money to gang members, that higher level people in the gang will simply take it from them. So it's unlikely that it will be successful in getting people out of the gangs. Instead, what will probably happen is that it will just fund the gangs with taxpayer or nonprofit donations.
Oster, do you think Advanced Peace could work or another similar program to help reduce violence?
So similar programs are something that'll be, and I think I'll be pushing for. Advanced Peace specifically would be something I have to look into because the data has been mixed. I think the problem is the narrative is co-opted around these types of programs. And the thing is, if we want to affect gun violence, if we want to make this city safer, we need to address the problems that lead up to those incidents before they get there. So all the people that were responsible for the crimes this weekend, there were a lot of circumstances in their lives that led them to that point, unfortunately. And I think there is a lack of compassion that, whether it's media or whether it's elected officials, that don't see. And so a program like Advanced Peace, I fully support Chief Dyer wanting to work with Mr. Lawrence and trying to come up with a solution that's ideal for Fresno because at the end of the day, Fresno is not like any other place, and we're going to have unique needs, and those unique needs are going to have to be met by that program. And hopefully, I think a program like that could really affect some change and make us safer.
You were watching a 2019 Fresno City Council District 2 Special Election Forum I'm David Taub with GV Wire, and this forum brought to you by GV Wire and CMAC. Jared Gordon, Mike Herbasi, Oscar Sandoval. Folks, I'm sure if you try to go from east to west across Highway 99, whether you're taking Shaw, whether you're taking Herndon, especially in rush hour, you're going to have a lot of patience. You're going to get caught in that traffic crunch. Veterans Boulevard is supposed to be the solution. We've been hearing about it for 40 years. 40 years, a lot of talk. Nothing's been built yet. So I'm wondering, what can you do as a council member to get the job done? Jared Gordon, do you get caught in that traffic at all?
I do sometimes, but my aunt lives south of the district on Polk. So if I'm going to visit her, well, I don't go and visit her at rush hour, frankly, because I know what Sean Polk is like. But I will run into that traffic periodically at Sean Polk. If I'm going north out of the city, then I'll run into the same problem at Herndon 99. Certainly, I'm intimately familiar with the traffic at both locations. So what I think in terms of potential solutions, we're going to have to be creative. We have some available funding from Measure C, not enough to build it. There's some possibility that we might be able to get some federal infrastructure money if an infrastructure package is passed. I think that's something that we should work with our elected officials in Washington to do. That's certainly something that I intend to do if I'm elected. And if that's not available, there's a new form of funding called, I'm going to mess up with the exact name, but it's essentially an infrastructure tax increment district.
It's an enhanced infrastructure district, yeah.
Yeah, so that's one potential way in which we could, I think as a last-ditch scenario, potentially fund the portion of Veterans Boulevard that we don't have Measure C funding for. And I mean, it is consistent with exactly what that law is intended to do and what that kind of district is intended to do. However, it does distribute tax money differently than it currently is, and that's why I think it should be a last-ditch option.
So, Oscar, what do you do to try to move the needle on Veterans Boulevard?
I think, so this is a problem I actually experience every day because I live in that area. And so I was stuck in traffic picking up my dry cleaning last night. And so
Your suit looks mighty clean.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So the thing is, I think we can open up more money for Measure C, whether it's from our partners at the federal level, to get Veterans Boulevard open. I think Fresno's population is growing. Next year is a census year, and our population is going to go up, and we're already experiencing a lot of traffic during rush hour. I think Veterans Boulevard will be something that benefits the entire city, and that'll be one of my top priorities as that city's council, or as that area's councilman.
Mike Herbasi, what do you do to get Veterans Boulevard?
We're going to
built?
get the money. You're right. There have been councilman after councilman that have been trying to do this. And it's not just a councilman. It's a councilman working with other council members, because this will impact 3 districts in the city. It'll impact the whole west area. And what we need to do is we want to be able to properly develop and grow the west area. They call it Forgotten Fresno. A lot of those folks don't have the infrastructure they need. They don't have the pedestrian pathways, the bike pathways, the bus routes out there that they need. And it's not going to happen unless we have growth. But Veterans Boulevard, from day one, 35,000 cars using it a day. We're about $25 million short of our goal. And my understanding is in the last One Voice trip they took to D.C., they had some good news from one of the senators where they're going to reallocate about $25 million in federal, and our federal money, that's our tax dollars, back here to Fresno so we can complete Veterans Boulevard. Because if you go out there, you're going to see a sign, date of completion 2019. Well, the next time they update that sign, I want it to be the last time they update it, because we have to get Veterans Boulevard built.
And briefly, any other strategies to help move traffic along, whether in District 2 or across the city? Jared?
Well, I think it's important that we get rid of the bottlenecks that we're already experiencing at Sean Polk, Herndon 99. Irrespective of whether Veterans Boulevard gets built, those need to get addressed. Now, we do already have some money allocated towards a fix at Sean Polk. I'm not sure that it's going to necessarily be enough for the long-term growth of all of the housing out west of 99. We're going to need to do at least the same thing in terms of expanding the capacity at Herndon 99, and we need to make sure that to the extent that there are other bottlenecks along Herndon that they get addressed, and that we fully expand Herndon all the way out to the edge of the sphere of influence.
Oscar, briefly, ideas to improve traffic in the district?
Yeah, some things we can look into are expanding the roadways and creating more bike lanes in the area. Again, I live in that area. I experience this problem every single day, and unfortunately, if you don't have a car, you can't get around. And so we need to make conditions so people can travel in multiple ways, whether even looking at like expanding bus routes or just, again, creating more bike lanes or expanding the roads.
Would you want to see BRT expanded in your district?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike, what do you think about fixing traffic?
So the only way we're going to be able to fix traffic, we're going to need more money, and we're only going to do that through economic development. And we talked about the West area a lot. A lot of those developer impact fees pay to improve our roads. And we may have to raise those to a point. That's what it's going to take to be able to develop things faster. And I have no problem standing up to do that. But what it's going to come down to is actually economic development. We also need to talk about safe routes to schools. We have schools not just in the south part of town, but in northwest Fresno, where kids have to walk through fields to get to school. So there are no paved sidewalks. And some people call it adventure, but you know what? It's not safe for our kids. We need to focus on traffic and speeding throughout our schools. I get complaints about that all the time, especially in the Herndon and Milburn area. And also finding ways to have traffic calming, to be able to reduce traffic on Audubon. That's a very high trafficked area as well. So we're going to have economic development in order to meet those needs. And at the same time, we're going to have someone, a councilman, who continually goes out there. You don't just walk when you're running for office. You also walk when you're in office to hear what the concerns of residents are.
All right. City Council, these races technically nonpartisan, but we know that's never really the case. But wondering, what are your political beliefs and your influences, and who's influenced you, and how's that going to go about when you make decisions, when you vote yes or no on the dais? Oscar, we'll start with you on this one.
I would say my political, hero, if I had one, would be FDR. If you're elected 4 times, that's an achievement. No other president has done that. I think his policies were always for the greater good. And as District 2's next councilman, I will always try to make policies that are for the greater good. And again, I think more so than any other candidate, brings that understanding that what happens in District 2 affects residents in District 1, in District 7, and the Central Valley, and so on. So policies for the greater good is what I will bring.
Jared, what are your influences? How do you go about deciding what's best for your district?
Well, I'm a lifelong Republican, and I grew up in the 1980s, so unsurprisingly, I am a Reagan Republican. I believe in having government that is oriented towards increasing the economy, improving the conditions for business, creating more jobs, more growth. I think that the opportunities that Fresno has are amazing, whether it's the growth of companies and collections of incubation like Bitwise in downtown, or some of the big manufacturers that we have out by the airport, or all of our homegrown small businesses that exist in the strip mall right near my house at Herndon and Milburn. All of those businesses have great opportunities for growth if the city of Fresno gets out of their way. And so I'm going to be committed to eliminating a lot of the rules and restrictions that our new development code has imposed on new businesses. As a business attorney, I think I'm uniquely suited to doing that. I deal with that virtually every day of my practice. And in fact, I sat through all the development code meetings when the development code was being considered, made all kinds of suggestions. None of them were implemented. All the problems that I thought were going to happen happened. You can even, if you want, go back and look at the city council meeting where I talked about what was going to happen with the legal non-conforming uses, which are businesses that exist somewhere but no longer conform to the new development code. I said that all over Fresno, there's going to be problems where those businesses that have been there in some cases for 50 years are no longer going to be allowed to be there. That's exactly what happened in the city council in their very first change to the development code. Went back and fixed that for Belmont and Kings Canyon, but we need to be committed to fix it all across the city.
All right, Mike, what philosophy is going to help guide you when it comes to decision making?
Before we come to that, I want to really chime in on this, and I'll answer your question. If we're going to change the development code, we should be talking to people that actually deal with it, like business owners, like the people in the development community, and the builders, and the people that have the tradesmen that actually build, and see the practical implications of changing our development code. We definitely want to make City Hall more business friendly. Money back guarantee is one step in that direction and hasn't done it all. But I'm not an expert in development, and I think none of us are. What we need to do is be committed to getting both sides of the issue, bringing people together, and actually implementing it, whether it's homelessness or it's development or any issue. A councilman's job is to listen. My dad always said, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen. So that's what I'm committed to doing. And that's how I'm going to be able to understand the needs of my district. So if I had to choose a politician, I can't choose anyone living, because you see all the fighting that we have today. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to be the adult in the council. I see this big divide. I'm uniquely qualified to bring both sides together because I have a broad base of support. I take a little bit of JFK and a little bit of Reagan. In fact, I spent my 18th birthday at the Reagan Library because I grew up in a Reaganite family. And what I would like to do is to be able to bring balance and common sense and bring both sides together, because a pothole doesn't take a Republican or a Democrat. A pothole takes someone who's willing to do the hard work to get the darn thing filled. And that's what I'm focused on.
Yeah, you want to chime in, Oscar, on development codes?
So I think what I bring to the table that my other opponents don't is I bring an understanding of policy and an understanding that we actually need to not only address city laws, but state laws, county laws, and bring all of these developers, local businessmen, actual residents, because the thing is, that's what the majority of the district is. We need to actually talk to the people and see what their needs are. So whenever I'm door knocking, I always frame the question is, what do you want to see more out of this district? What do you think can we do about it? And a lot of the time, that's how the best ideas come about. Just listening to people and having an open ear.
Right. This special election, August 13th. If nobody gets a majority of votes, the top two move into a November runoff. That gives you about 100 days until your next election, March 2020. So I'm wondering, if you're successful in this November runoff, what are you going to do in those 100 days to make sure voters feel good and vote for you again? Oscar, we'll start with you on this.
The first thing is I'll show up to every meeting.
So I like it you guys read GV Wire. Thank you.
So show up to every meeting. I will push all the priorities that are I've been pushing for all along. Again, that's addressing homelessness, addressing the drug problem, more resources for the district, such as parks, libraries. They're all on oscarforfresno.com. And I will really push for legislation that really just brings our city forward. I think currently there are members of the council that kind of want to keep the status quo, and we need to think bigger. I want to have a Fresno with more Bitwises and more businesses like that move our city into the next century.
Mike, you could literally have 100 days in office before your next election. What are you going to do to impress those voters to vote for you again?
I think you have to walk before you can run. My biggest priority, I have a list of all the thousands of people I've talked to of what they want to see. Constituent services, number one. People are tired of the speeding on Alluvial. They're tired of all the donuts out there. They're tired of the speeding on Browning. I mentioned the issue about Star Elementary. They're tired of some of their roads not being paved. We didn't even talk about SB1. We got the least amount of money in our district because we don't just have an open seat, we have a vacant seat. I've got a lot of work to do. So my biggest priority is going to be answering all these requests I've had from the residents to try to get things moving and get them a representative that's going to work hard for them. There are the big item issues. We talked about public safety being number one, but I think the basics are also important too. I'm going to be a council member for District 2. I care about the city. I care about thinking big and our big issues, but we need someone who's going to really cherish this district and do right by its residents.
Jared, what are you going to do in 100 days to prove to the voters they made the right choice?
So the budget will be finished this summer. It will be difficult for anyone who, no matter who's elected, hopefully myself, to spend any additional money then. It's possible to reallocate money, but generally speaking, the council does not like new spending initiatives outside of the typical budget process. So what it's going to come down to is constituent services. We've had no council member now for more than 2 months, and we will have no council member all the way through November. So my expectation is that there are going to be a lot of constituent services that need to be addressed. Everything from getting people new garbage cans and filling potholes to trying to figure out how to deal with particular homeless issues and problem homeless people who maybe have mental illness or other kinds of significant problems and are causing repeat criminal activities in their area. We need to address all of those kinds of issues, and I have a feeling I will have my hands full for the first 100 days, simply trying to catch up on what is essentially half a year of constituent service. But I'm certain that I'll also be able to do some work on starting on the revamp of the development code that I intend, so that we can start working on the economic growth that our city so desperately needs.
All right, gentlemen, it's a time where you make your final pitch, your elevator pitch, if you will, the voters of District 2, why you should be the next councilman. Oscar, give us a minute of your best stuff.
Thank you. So I got into this race because I didn't feel like a lot of our district was being accurately represented. I think I bring a policy background. I think that sets me apart from everyone else that's running. And I think that what happens in District 2 is kind of, I guess you can call it a beacon for the rest of the city. Because it's kind of like if you modeled California over the rest of the country. California in a lot of ways is about 10 years ahead of the rest of the country. District 2 is kind of in that same mold for Fresno. So all of these good ideas, like the Bitwises, all that we need to bring that to our district as well, but also so it affects our city. The thing is though, and I talked about this earlier, we need to bring a modern approach to it. So whether it is a pothole on Barstow, whether it's completing Veterans Boulevard, whether it's settling traffic around the Autobahn or even going down Shaw, that'll be something that I bring attention for the big issues and the small issues.
Mike Carbasi, why do you think you're the best candidate?
Folks, my name is Mike Carbasi, and I'm running to be your next city councilman. This special election truly is special because we're paying for it. But I promise to stick around. We haven't had a councilman in our district in over 20 years that was born and raised in our district with our values. And I come from a small business background. I know what it's like to have to deal with the city. I know what it's like to have to deal with the state and get burned. And I understand your frustrations. I've shown my commitment to you by walking door to door for the last 6-7 months to hear your issues directly. And as your councilman, I'm still going to be walking door to door. In fact, I'm going to be the most accessible councilman we've had in a long time. My cell phone number is 601-0564. I want you to call me. And if you want to email me, that's fine. Mike Carbasi, just MikeForFresno.com or Mike@MikeForFresno.com. Email me your issues. Let me know what's going on in your neighborhood. I've built a broad base of support because in our council, we have a really fractured council, and we want to bring it back to some normalcy. And that's why I'm supported by the Fresno Police Officers Association. I'm supported by Sheriff Margaret Mims. I'm supported by Chief Jerry Dyer and our Chamber of Commerce, as well as our building trades. People understand that we need leadership at City Hall, and we need leadership from District 2. And I'm ready to hit the ground running. I haven't waited to get elected to help you. If you have a problem in one of your parks, you have a problem with a pothole, call me. We're going to work on it now. The election's coming up in 48 days, but who's counting? But I'm walking every day. And you won't always see me in a suit, but I'm ready to listen. And I'd really be honored to earn your support. There is no one that's going to be stronger on public safety than me, no one who's going to be committed to passing a balanced budget. My top 3 issues are public safety, economic development and jobs, and infrastructure in our district.
All right, Mike, thank you so much. Jared, why don't you wrap us up? What makes you the best candidate?
I've been committed to providing services for the city of Fresno and the people of Fresno for my entire professional career. My very first job was as an intern for a council member, where I did constituent services and read the budget on behalf of the council member to try and cut the fat. And he successfully proposed a bunch of spending cuts based on some of the research that I did. Ever since then, I've been working through community groups, including the Chamber of Commerce and through local political organizations to try to improve the city of Fresno. That's why I was appointed to the City of Fresno Charter Review Committee, which is effectively like a constitutional convention for the city of Fresno. And in fact, some of what I wrote ended up being approved by the voters and put in the city charter. If you elect me, I'm going to focus on improving our homelessness situation, trying to address it with dignity towards the homeless, respect towards the homeless, but also with the expectation that everyone has to uphold the law. I'm also going to work on improving our streets and some of the difficult problems that we face on infrastructure in District 2 in particular. I will also address for you the rash of property crimes, which we haven't talked about at all, but which I know people in the district have been incredibly upset about. I think it's time that we have a council member in our district who has the experience, the training in the law to be able to write effective laws for you, and the training in policy and constituent services to serve the people of the district properly. Thank you. Please vote August 13th.
It's vote August 13th is a special election. You can still register if not registered. Usually these elections, low turnout. Don't make that so. It's so easy to vote. Please do so. I want to thank Jared Gordon, Mike Carbasi, Oscar Sandoval, the great folks here in the technical staff at CMAC, my colleagues here at GV Wire. I'm David Taub. Thank you.